Anyways, the video that we're going to be talking about is the Odyssey. I got a bad feeling about this one, and I was saying that I think anime has really captivated this idea of traditional media where you can still have the traditional storytelling and framing without putting it at the forefront of your content, without making whatever ideals that you want to portray at the forefront of your content. It still allows for you to express a particular story and not shove it down people's throats and allow them to actually make their own judgments, opinions about the content that you're trying to display, show, or use as entertainment. And what I think Western culture has started to lose, and this is why anime has become so popular, is that it starts to lose the ability to tell stories in a traditional way and providing ideals, content, and just culture in general without providing some kind of agenda attached to it. Now, I haven't watched this full video, but I do think that that's generally what he's going to be talking about. So let's get into it.
Others. Don't worry though, 300, you'll always have a special place in my heart.
This is Sparta!
But it seems like this year, things might finally be changing. Christopher Nolan has turned his gigantic quantum space brain away from discovering the secrets of the universe and assembled one of the biggest all-star casts in modern Hollywood for The Odyssey, a retelling of Homer's epic saga about the Greek king Odysseus and his decade-long journey to get home to his family after fighting in the Trojan Wars for another 10 years before that. Meanwhile, his wife has to keep the home fires burning and contend with the unwanted advances of men who want the crown. It's actually kind of hilarious when you look at all this on a map, because a journey from Troy to Ithaca is only like 500 miles by sea, and it should have taken him a couple of weeks, but man, the gods just had it in for that fucking guy.
Honey, I'm home!
Look who the fates dragged in.
Anyway, stories don't get much more epic than the Odyssey. It truly is one of the great adventures in human history, blending together mythology, religion, monsters, and the unbreakable determination of the human spirit. And bringing it to life on screen is a challenge that will strain the very limits of modern filmmaking. But now that I've seen the trailer and I've considered the artistic vision behind this movie, I have to say my reaction was meh. I don't know what it is, man. There's just something about this movie that doesn't quite stir anything in me, which is pretty surprising because in theory at least it's got all the ingredients for success. The kind of source material that's practically tailor-made for epic Hollywood filmmaking, the kind of all-star cast that only comes together once in a generation, and a director with a mostly good track record as a filmmaker. So why the fuck does it feel so bland? Well, to try and answer this, let's take a closer look at those key elements again, shall we? First of all, there's the source material. Nothing wrong there, right?
Wrong.
Well, the problem is that the Odyssey was originally written in ancient...
I mean, we all generally know how the story of the Odyssey goes. He goes on his expedition, and it starts off with him going to the location. I don't remember the full term of the Odyssey, but takes this 10-year journey where he goes in the first year, and then on his way back, he pisses off a god, and now he has to go through all these trials in order to get back, which extends his trip to where it takes him almost 7 years to get back home. And obviously on the final trial, he beats out on his final suitors that were vouching for his wife, and ends up becoming victorious. And the Odyssey is a very extensive novel. If you have not read it, which I would assume everybody has, definitely need to catch up on it.
Greek, obviously, meaning that it has to be translated into English for it to be legible, and what kind of story you ultimately get very much depends on which translated version you read. In this case, Christopher Nolan has publicly stated that he's a big fan of the 2017 adaptation of the Odyssey, which was translated from Greek by British writer Emily Wilson. Why exactly does that matter? Well, because Emily Wilson just so happens to be a hardcore progressive feminist who specifically set out to reimagine Homer's text through a female-coded, gender-critical...
Wait. Out of all the Odyssey iterations that you take one that was only 9 years old, not even, and that is what you're going to use to base it for your film. Like, I don't understand how that even makes any remote sense, in my opinion. Like, that really boggles my mind, because there's no way that you're going to use the most recent iteration to describe a movie. What? Like, come on.
Postmodernist lens. Because of course she did. Basically stretching the very limits of the original text to bend it around modern sensibilities. It's the same kind of creeping, cloying, well, I think what he really meant to say here was bullshit that gave us 2026's Animal Farm, a story that went from a parable about the Russian Revolution to a ridiculous, shallow, capitalism bad piece of Hollywood slop. That is the version we're likely to get here with all its gender identity navel-gazing, and if that doesn't raise a few red flags, then let's take a closer look at that all-star cast, shall we? Now, Matt Damon and Anne Hathaway are solid enough as the two leads, at least. I mean, if I was to be super critical, I'd say that Hathaway hasn't done anything particularly significant since... well, the last time she was in a Christopher Nolan movie, and she was arguably the worst thing about Interstellar, but that's a conversation for another day. I can't say I'm ever particularly excited by an Anne Hathaway project, but holy shit, is she making a comeback this year. In 2026 alone, she's in 5 separate movie projects, one of which is playing in the cinemas right now. But speaking of overexposed actors that we could all use a break from, Zendaya is in this movie as Athena, the...
Listen, I don't have any hate for Zendaya, right? But I do think that when we're talking about Greek mythology and all the stories and the statues that are in Greece, I just don't see Zendaya as playing Aphrodite. Or, no, he said Athena. Sorry, Athena. And, like, it really just, why are we doing this? Because if it was a story of, like, Martin Luther King and then we put, like, a white woman to be his wife, like, that just sounds crazy. Like, what are we, like, how are you going to just completely shift the source material and, like, the casting for, like, even in the statues, you can tell the facial structure is mainly white. But I guess we'll see. I mean, they're Greek gods, so who knows, right?
goddess of wisdom. Holy fuck, man, this girl's become the female equivalent of Pedro Pascal. She is just everywhere all of a sudden, and for the life of me, I cannot understand why. I have never seen a single Zendaya performance in my life and thought, oh my god, she absolutely carried this movie. Tell me.
That is true. Like, even in Spider-Man, like, Tom Holland is, like, carrying the hell out of that. Like, if we're talking about Mary Jane's, Zendaya is not on the top, is not. No. In reality, we're probably doing Gwen Stacy from Amazing Spider-Man, then the original Mary Jane, and then maybe the Zendaya version, obviously, because she's the last one. So, but like, no, Zendaya is not hitting on all cylinders when it comes to performing, in my opinion.
What's your favourite Zendaya expression? The angry frown, the confused frown, or the confused angry frown?
Yes.
Elliot Page is also in this movie. As what exactly? I don't fucking know. A drummer boy, maybe? Page is like 5 feet tall and weighs 90 pounds soaking wet, so I don't really see how they're gonna fit in amongst all those big Greek soldiers and terrifying monsters. Lupita Nyong'o is widely rumoured to be playing the Greek princess Helen of Troy, which if it turns out to be true would make about as much sense as Papa Asuido playing Severus Snape, but hey, what can I say?
It's Hollywood, baby.
Thank
But like, how do you even? That's like completely just like I just and listen. I think there's this problem where people are trying to make things about, and I've said this before, this agenda. Like it just doesn't make sense as to how you're putting cat like where do you gain the benefit out of going so far off of the source material that you start to lose what the essence of the story was. Like this was all a similar, like even if let's take the race aspect out of it, right? Most of the people looked similar at that time, especially when they were interacting with each other in certain groups. Why is there such differentiation? And even if you're going to say, okay, these groups could be exposed to, different nationalities and stuff like that, but in reality, most of the time, the people that were within your area, your vicinity, is what you knew, and they generally looked alike. So even when you're making stories like the Odyssey, there has to be some kind of uniformity with the individuals that are actually portraying in that movie. Because it doesn't make sense unless the story depicts someone from a different land coming into the story, then you can add that other race or person in there. But when you're talking about, even when they're thinking about their gods, they're probably thinking about their gods in a way that represent them. And that's what you see in their statues, right? That's what you see in the artwork. That's what you hear about in their stories. So there's no way you're getting all these mixed individuals to play in this movie. Like it doesn't make any sense at all.
you, Rachel. But the thing that stood out for me about the entire cast in this trailer was just how bland and mundane they all look and sound. Every time I saw one of them, all I thought was, oh yeah, there's Robert Pattinson, there's Charlize Theron, there's Tom Holland. Where are the larger-than-life mythical figures of legend that should be leaping from the pages of Homer's epic to amaze us all?
Like, Achilles, like, that's... all the characters in Achilles, like, even just the way that Hector looked, right? You can tell, first of all, they made, obviously, Hector taller than, is it Perseus? Paris, right? Made him taller than Paris, right? So it sets that kind of older, dominant figure situation. He was bigger, and just even the way that he carried himself throughout the movie, you can tell like he's clearly the next in line. Like he's going to be the older brother that's supposed to be stepping up and fitting that role to be next in line. So he has to step up and ensure that they try and claim victory. And when Achilles tries to hold him accountable, or does hold him accountable, I don't say try, does hold him accountable for killing his cousin and screams his name, Hector, Hector. Hector understands that as the eldest brother, and obviously as the one that killed his cousin, I gotta defend the city. And I gotta go out and fight this man. Like these are like just the actor choices and just figuring out exactly who would represent those positions in this way. Like you're talking about a story that has lasted over centuries. like over millennia. Like this is not just like regular, like just a regular story or movie that you're trying to portray and just say, hey, like just put this person in there. That's like shooting a backyard film and saying, hey, let me just take my brother and a couple of our friends and just say, let's film a movie. Like it's not the same. It's not the same at all.
It all feels weirdly subdued and underwhelming, and a big part of that decision is to have them speak with American accents using modern
Why are they so
terminology.
small?
My dad is coming home.
Oh, your dad's coming back, is he? Did he take some bitchin' selfies? Hope he didn't get godmogged along the way. There's a reason movies like this traditionally use theatrical English and formalized language for their dialogue.
Yeah,
It gives them a
because-
sense of grandeur, seriousness, and dramatic weight that naturally lend itself to the epic story they're trying to tell. Having your actors talk like they just walked in off the street in downtown LA just feels weirdly lazy and immersion breaking. And before anyone chimes in with little pearls of wisdom like, Drinker, you know as well as I do they would have spoken Greek in a story like this, so why does it even matter what accents they use? Well, hypothetical straw man, we all know the language they would have spoken, but we also know that having your entire cast learn a whole new language just so the audience can sit through 3 hours of subtitles is neither practical nor logical. That doesn't
Exactly.
mean that you have to go in completely the other direction and give us shit like this. And this all brings me back
No
to the man
way.
at the center of all.
I wonder what the speeches were in those movies. Like the speeches had to have been crazy. Oh my gosh. Let's go. Like I do that one on Knicks when the Knicks score hit a three, like a big three. Like, come on. Like people are talking about going to war. Like you talking about let's go? Come on, guys. Let's go.
Of this, Christopher Nolan, the director and writer. Now, I know the man has a fan base so rabidly loyal that they make Snyder Bros look like fucking normies, and he's given us some fascinating films to chew over in his time. But I'll be honest here, the guy can also be his own worst enemy at times. Sometimes he really is just too smart for his own goods. Rightly or wrongly, he's developed a reputation as a clinical, intellectual, and slightly sterile kind of director, a master of ideas who can't seem to wrap his head around simple humanity. And I get the impression that's always chafed at him, especially with his more recent movies where it feels like he's got something to prove. Like the weirdly out of place love scenes in Oppenheimer that feels like two androids replicating their understanding of a human relationship. The man definitely has a niche, but character driven historical epics don't seem to be it. And with Odyssey, it's like he's saying, see, there's more to me than sci-fi thrillers and slightly overrated superhero movies. And I don't know, man, from the casting to the dialogue to the bleak washed out cinematography, I can't shake the feeling that he just isn't the right man to direct a movie like this. I mean shit, maybe I'm totally wrong on this one. Maybe the Odyssey will be the crowning achievement in Nolan's career and raking more money than Avatar, or maybe...
But I also think that too, like when you talk about even just stories like Game of Thrones, like the viciousness that was in that story, the way that they spoke, all the characters had a particular dialect that represented the different nations, but you still understood what they were talking about, right? Even the tonations of their voices, how they spoke, how they moved, like it provided an atmosphere that you really understood what it was to be in those medieval times. You really were like, yo, like it's really, in my opinion, when I watched Game of Thrones, I'm like, damn, I would never want to live in that time. Because even if you rule in and you live in and you're the big dog, everybody's coming at your neck. Right? Everybody's trying to take your head off so they can take your spot. Then, if you're in the poor, if you're in the trenches, you just end up caught in the crossfire whenever there's war. And then you have no real ability to level up because there's the royal family and all the people that you have to serve up top. Any sharp move, any dagger, any like no medicine, like you're really just in there in the trenches, like good luck. So just really immersing yourself in that Especially with something like Game of Thrones. I with Tom Holland and Zendaya, I just don't see that hitting for that time period. And also, I think, unless I'm completely wrong, but the guys during those times had to be very. Um, I think having older cast for especially for those kind of films causes for the illusion or just the natural cinematography that allows for the understanding that young men were prepared to go to war at really 15 years old. Like 300 depicting the young Spartans fighting, um, and then seeing how most of those guys were very young going into battle. Like, but they don't have that like baby face. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't look as rugged. It doesn't have that same medieval times energy. Honestly, the Odyssey right now is looking more like I don't even know. I want to go see it too because movie like stories like that are really great ones, and I used to love them in my English class. But this does not look like it's gonna portray any of that. Like my dad watches 300 Troy like on repeat. Whenever it's on the TV, he's throwing it on. Like I just don't see that same replay value that you would get out of a Troy in this movie right here. I just don't see it. I don't see it at all.